Hey guys, this is a new lesson of spoken Lithuanian, and today we're going to talk about where to use Lithuanian cases, because a lot of my students actually often ask me, even the ones that somehow learned the ending, specific endings for each case, they still sometimes struggle with specific situations where to use a case. And while we have a lot of situations like these, usually there are main situations for each case, like specific situation in language, in spoken language, where you have to use one case over the other or over the others, right? And that's what we're going to look for today. By the way, if you want more phrases, I have a free PDF and audiobook. You can find it in the description. Just click on the button, I will send it to you. This is my free gift to you for watching these videos of mine. And let's immediately go into these cases. Okay, so the first case you have to know is nominative, right? It's a nominative case. And the other thing you have to understand that each case corresponds basically to a question in Lithuanian language. And why, well, not necessarily always this question is going to translate directly into English in a way that, that makes sense, that is intuitive, but it's going to help you to understand that. So nominative question in Lithuanian language is kas. And that would be who or what in English language. So basically who for people, right? And what for things. And now some of the examples that we might use for nominative, right? So that would be, for example, the first and the most common one is, right, when you have a subject. So basically when you have a subject in a sentence, it's almost always going to be nominative, right? The actual subject is always going to be nominative. It's sometimes that in the beginning of the sentence you might have a different case, and you might think it's a subject, but subject is always going to be in nominative. So, for example, vaikas žaidžia, right? Vaikas žaidžia. So that's a child is playing, right? Vaikas žaidžia. So vaikas is a nominative case. Now today we're not going to go specifically into endings of each. I will maybe do separate lessons in the future. Right now we're just going into theory of how and when actually to use these cases, okay? So if you have any additional questions, just shoot them in the comments, okay? So yeah, so subject, right? That's one thing to use. A child is playing. Vaikas žaidžia. For example, you could say like naming or identifying something. So let me give you an example. Let's say you could say this tai yra namas, you could say, right? That would be, this is a house. Tai yra namas. So in this situation, you're identifying that this is a house, and you use nominative case in this one, right? This is a house. Tai yra namas. You could say let's make it like more common way of saying, like you could say tai mano draugas. Tai mano draugas. This is my friend, right? This is my friend. That's a more common way of saying it. You can do it like this, like naming something specifically or identifying it as my friend in this sentence. And the third one, of course, is with to be. With the verb to be, which is basically the same as identifying, right? But I would have to emphasize it more. Like for example, you could say something like jis yra geras mano draugas. Now in this situation, you're not necessarily identifying, but you're just saying that he is a good friend. Like maybe the good friend is the emphasis of the sentence, and you're saying he is my good friend. So we have draugas, right, over here is a nominative as well, right? So once again, maybe I will underline which part of these is actually nominative, right? So we have vaikas over here, you have draugas over here, and you have the same draugas over here, okay? So that's the way you use nominative case. It's usually going to be a subject, so that's in the beginning of the sentence, but not always, definitely not always, right? Because sometimes you're just going to have it as, as an object, and it's still, it can be, well, basically it's not an object. It's still a subject. It's just the sentence is inverted, okay? That's what happens over here. But yeah, so that's nominative. That's like the basic, basic case that you can use. Now, the other one is genitive, and it's usually the one of the two that I see most people struggling, right? And genitive answers to a couple of questions. It's either ko or kieno. That's in Lithuanian language, and in English language is it's of who and of what, right? And of course, you can also say whose, right? Whose something is. So that's kieno part would be whose. Okay, so let's go into examples, right, immediately. So the first example would be possession. So that's one of the most common ones of this. So for example, brolio knyga. So my brother's book. You see that in Lithuanian, I don't have to emphasize that it's my brother's book. I can just say brother's book, and I don't have to emphasize that it's my brother's. But still, like possession is almost always in genitive, right? I'm not going to say always because there are exceptions. I don't want to mislead you, but like 99.9999 out of 100 times, okay? Another one, and it's probably, I would say, the most important one, because usually what people mix up is genitive and accusative. And in this situation, when we have a genitive, when it's a direct object, but after negation, or rather in a negative sentence. For example, you could say, aš neturiu laiko. I don't have time. So that's, this laiko is in genitive, right? Because it's after negation. Direct object in negative sentence is almost always going to be in genitive, right? And another important one is, like, for example, want to say like quantity or amount. So that would be also, like, for example, daug žmonių, right? Daug žmonių. So this žmonių is in genitive as well, right? So because of what, there is a lot of people. That's why you use genitive case over here, right? And genitive is one of the more common ones. Like genitive, accusative, those are really common because these are usually objects in the sentence, and you either go with one or the other. Okay. Good. So now we have genitive as well, right? So now after genitive we have dative. Dative, right? And with dative, again, the question is kam in Lithuanian language, and this is to whom, or like for whom, what. Okay, so basically these questions, like to whom, for what, and the most common situations where we use these is receiver of action. Receiver of action is the most common one. So basically, let me give you an example. I have a bunch of examples, written here, but let me just take one. For example, aš daviau vaikui saldainį, right? I gave candy to the kid or to the child, right? So that vaikui, right? Saldainį is accusative, right? Because it's direct object of a affirmative sentence. But vaikui is in dative. Okay. Again, you could use it, for example, like saying something to someone. Aš pasakiau tiesą savo draugui, right? I told the truth to my friend, right? That's a good example, right? So draugui, that's dative. For who? Well, to whom did I say the truth, right? A very common way of using it. And of course, for someone's benefit, like actually for someone. So basically, aš padedu mamai. I am helping my mom, right? Or I help my mom. It's the same thing in Lithuanian language. That's another very common way of using this one, right? Just for someone's benefit, I'm doing this, right? So I have vaikui. I have vaikui over here. I have draugui, and mamai. So these are dative ones in Lithuanian language. Again, very common situation and in a specific way. Basically, you're doing this for, I would say, these questions like very well correspond to Lithuanian version, like to whom, for what, right? So those are almost always going to be in Lithuanian in dative, right? A very good indicator that is going to be dative is these English questions. If they work, we're pretty much good to go. Accusative. So accusative is, again, now with accusative, now the problems arise, right? Because usually if we translated these questions, it will be, in these situations, it would be whom or what. So that's very close to nominative, right? And that's a big difference here. But let me just give you some examples, and I think it's going to be clear because, as I said, the biggest problems people have with genitive and accusative. So think of it like this: the most common one, the easiest explanation of accusative is what the subject acts on with the action. So, for example, you could say, "Aš matau šunį," right? I see a dog. So, subject I, predicate see, right? And now direct object of me seeing, that like me seeing, the action of seeing that I'm doing on is the dog in this situation. I see a dog. So, therefore, this dog is in accusative. Basically, the direct object of a sentence, right? Almost always in accusative. Unless it's a negative sentence, then it's genitive, okay? Again, a very common way, you could say motion towards something. Okay, so for example, einu į miestą. So I am going to the city. So this is, people often mistake this particular motion towards something with location, and they tend to use locative in this situation. That's one of the more common, let's say, mistakes when it comes to cases. But yeah, we use accusative over here. And another one, which may not be very intuitive, but it's time duration. Not always, but for example, in a sentence like aš laukiau valandą. I was waiting for an hour. So this valanda is again in accusative. Okay, that's what we do. So šunį in this situation, we have į miestą, right? And I have valanda. So what you notice is that with motion towards something, you're usually going to have this one. Like you're going to have e, preposition į miestą, right? Į miestą. That's the preposition you're usually going to be using. So after e, you're almost always going to have accusative over here. Okay. So now let's move to the next page. I'm using just simple page to do this one. So now instrumental, right? So instrumental is quoi. And English language, we usually are going to use, like I have a bunch of here, but let me just shorten it a little bit. I would say the most common is with what or by what. That's the most common way of understanding this question, and particularly situations where one has to use instrumental. So let's say tool or means to do something. For example, rašau, let's make it longer. Aš dažnai rašau pieštuku. I often write with pencil or by pencil, right? So this pieštuku is in instrumental, right? So basically accompaniment, well, let's not use this word, but like with who, basically, right? Aš leidžiu laiką su draugu. I'm spending time with my friend. Again, I don't have to use my Lithuanian language over here, but draugu is an instrumental. And another very common way, but I would say this is, these are all common, but these usually go by, the most common is going to be at the top over here. So that's role or a state. So for example, I would probably use this one, like, jis dirbo mokytoju. So he worked as a teacher. Another very common way. By what or with what doesn't work here. But so as well works over here. As a teacher, mokytoju. You can translate this sentence, right? You can say he worked as a teacher. You could also say jis dirbo kaip mokytojas. So he worked like a teacher, and in this situation you would have nominative over here, but that's not a very common way to say it in Lithuanian language. Therefore, we use instrumental over here. I will give you another example where you couldn't use this version. Like, for example, you could say jis apsimetė mano draugu. He pretended to be my friend. Now, this is a situation where you have to use instrumental, because it wouldn't work, because it's not like a profession. With a profession, it could work like as a teacher, like a teacher. In this situation, it doesn't. He pretended to be my friend. Jis apsimetė mano draugu. So that's instrumental. In a very good example, right? You have to use it necessarily in this situation. So pieštuku we have draugu, we have mokytoju over here, and we have draugu. So that's, again, instrumental in use. Now the next one, very common one, is locative. And people sometimes tend to have problems with these, but I would say, especially in the Lithuanian language, and when it comes to endings, it's very straightforward. It's almost always going to end in a, right? So in what or where, basically. So the most common one, and I don't even have like 3 different situations. We have just basically 2, and is location. And it can be metaphorical location. It can be an actual physical location. So, for example, susitiksime mieste. We will meet in the city or at the city. So mieste, right? Maybe, for example, let's take a metaphorical location. I could say viskas tavo galvoje. It is all in your head, right? So you just say to someone, you're imagining this. Viskas tavo galvoje. And another one, very common one, is time. We have it with time, but it's less common because usually it's with very specific periods of time. So let's say susitiksime vakare. So that's not an actual location, but we will meet in the evening. You see, even in English, we use in over here, which would indicate a location, even though we're talking about time, right? So it's the same thing in Lithuanian language. Susitiksime vakare, susitiksime ryte, we will meet in the morning. Again, all of these situations work, but usually ryte, vakare, those are just like specific days, specific times of the day. But even if you have like in the afternoon, that would be already not locative. That would be per pietus. So basically during lunch, and that's already ka pietus, that's plural accusative. So basically just think of it maybe like this: morning and evening, and just have these two for now, and maybe we'll do like a separate lesson for locative where we'll give more examples, but morning and evening. And yeah, or actual location, metaphorical or physical one. And the last one, okay, so basically, yeah, I have to just emphasize the words that are here in locative, right? Galvoje, mieste, and vakare. You see a ending, which indicates location, locative. And we have vocative, right? Which is, I would say, it's not that common to use in Lithuanian language, but basically, we don't have a specific question for this one. There's no question. But that's just addressing, calling for someone, or getting attention, emotional, emotional addressing. You could add that, but I'm not even add it here because I don't want to, mislead you a little bit. So basically, whenever you say like, "Hey, friend," you would say "Sveikas, drauge." Hello, friend. Hey, Tom, or just Tom. Tommy. So Tom, you're shouting, right? Let's add exclamation mark. So that there are specific sendings for that, for names, like for all the other nouns as well, but it's basically just actually addressing somebody, getting attention, calling for. And for example, in English language, especially in movies, you see a lot of somebody addressing somebody by name while talking. So you would use vocative in Lithuanian language for that. But it's very uncommon, and it's almost at it can become cringy very fast if you do it too much. So I wouldn't recommend it, right? Unless you really want to do it. But yeah, you have this one as well. Locative is good to know, but it's not something that you have to necessarily use it all the time. Okay, so vocative is as well something to know for. So yeah, as I said. Let's quickly go back through these. Like nominative, subject, naming something, or with the verb to be, when we're saying that something is. Genitive, you show possession after negation, or with quantity, right? Or with quantity. Dative, actually for something, to something, for what, and so forth. Accusative, direct object of the sentence, motion towards something, or sometimes time duration. Instrumental, by what means, by what, with, whenever you use with or by, you have instrumental, right? And sometimes role or state, which is less common, but still quite used. Locative, actual physical location, actual metaphorical location, or sometimes with specific times, so basically morning and evening. And vocative, when addressing somebody, right? So yeah, these are the cases. I mean, it is scary, right? Especially if you're coming from a language like English, which doesn't have cases. You have like prepositions usually that you use. Like sometimes they indicate a case, but it's not the same thing, right? But I would say it's manageable. Once you understand the situations where you have to use them, now you have to know the endings, right? But that's for another lesson. I will create it in the future, maybe another lesson where I will just quickly go through some of the most common endings and how to indicate them. Tell me or not whether or not this is something that's useful to you. I mean, you probably tried learning cases before. I don't know. Tell me if this helps. Do I need to make lessons like that in the future? Okay, because any feedback from you really helps me out. And yeah, as I said in the beginning of the lesson, if you want more phrases, I have a specific audio book and a PDF book that I've created. You can find it in the description in the pinned comment. Just click on it, download it. It's my gift to you. And as I said, tell me whether or not you like long lessons like these. And if you do, I will try to make more of them, and I will see you in the future. Bye.